My husband asked for divorce at my parents' funeral. Weeks later, I left him bankrupt and begging on. The rain had been falling without pause for 3 long days, its heavy drops slamming against the funeral home windows like 1,000 small fists. Each sound echoed inside my chest, matching the hollow rhythm of my shattered heart. Inside those walls, the two people who had been my strength and comfort lay side by side in identical mahogany caskets. My mother's fight with cancer had taken her slowly, wearing her body down piece by piece. And just 3 days after she closed her eyes for the last time, my father's heart gave out. The doctors called it a medical tragedy, but I knew the truth. He had loved her so fiercely that life without her wasn't possible. He didn't die because of his heart. He died because it was broken. I stood stiffly in my black dress, my children pressed tightly to my side as if they could sense I was about to collapse. Amanda, my 16-year-old, tried to stand tall, but her mascara bled down her pale cheeks. Matthew, only 14, clenched his jaw the same way his grandfather always used to when he was holding back emotion. And little Emily, barely 8, gripped her stuffed rabbit so hard her knuckles turned white, whispering questions I had no answers for. Around us, the room filled with a low hum of relatives and family friends. People murmured condolences, shared their favorite memories of my parents, dabbed their eyes with tissues. Yet through all of it, all I could hear was the silence where my parents' laughter used to be. That silence was deafening. And then out of nowhere, the man who was supposed to be my anchor, my partner of 18 years, leaned close. His name was Daniel, the husband who had promised me loyalty through every storm. His breath brushed against my ear, and in the middle of my parents' funeral, he whispered 6 words that cut deeper than the graves we were about to fill. I want a divorce, Claire. It's over. The entire world stopped spinning. The rain outside paused. My pulse froze mid-beat. I turned to him, certain that grief had twisted my hearing. What did you just say? My voice was barely a whisper, trembling like a child's. You heard me, he said flatly, straightening his silk tie, the one I had saved for months to buy him as an anniversary gift. His eyes, a cold gray, held no regret, no warmth. They looked at me not with compassion, but with irritation, as if burying my parents was nothing more than an obstacle standing between him and his next appointment. We'll discuss details later. Try to hold it together for the kids. And then he stepped away. Just like that. As if he hadn't just torn my life apart in the cruelest way possible. He moved toward my uncle, shaking his hand with that same polished smile everyone always admired. To the rest of the world, Daniel was still the charming attorney with a picture-perfect family. But I saw the ghost standing in his place, the ghost of the man I thought I had married. The ghost of the life I thought we'd built together. Amanda's trembling fingers slipped into mine. Mom, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Maybe I had. Maybe I was finally seeing clearly who Daniel really was. I watched him glide through the crowd, his mask perfectly intact, laughing politely with relatives who didn't know that just seconds earlier he had destroyed me. Something heavy and cold began to replace the love I once felt for him. He hadn't chosen just any day to end our marriage. He had chosen the absolute worst day of my life, the day I buried both of my parents. He knew grief would leave me defenseless, too devastated to fight back. But Daniel had made a fatal mistake. Because while he may have seen only a broken daughter, a grieving wife, a fragile mother, he had forgotten the truth. I was my father's daughter. And my father had taught me that sometimes, when a predator circles you, the only way to survive is to become one yourself. When the service ended, people slowly made their way to the cemetery. My children clung to me as we followed the procession through the rain-soaked streets. The sky was heavy, as though it was mourning with me. I should have been numb, too broken to feel anything, but Daniel's words kept burning in my ears, poisoning every step I took. At Greenwood Cemetery, the ground was soft from days of rain. Mud clung to our shoes as we gathered around the 2 open graves. My brother Mark stood on my right, holding his wife's hand. On my left, my younger sister Anna clutched her newborn close, tears streaming down her face. We were a family shattered, and yet, even in this raw grief, I could feel Daniel standing slightly apart, checking the time on his expensive watch like the ceremony was delaying his schedule. I shifted Emily in my arms, she was too frightened to stand alone, and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Grandma and Grandpa loved you so much." Her big brown eyes stared at the caskets, and her small voice cracked. "Why can't they wake up, Mommy?" My throat burned, but I forced a smile, brushing her damp hair back. Sometimes people get so tired, baby, that they need to sleep forever. It was a lie I hated telling, but how do you explain death to an 8-year-old? Amanda's sobs grew louder, quiet but desperate, while Matthew tried to hide his tears, clenching his jaw like his grandfather always did. I wanted to hold them all together, but I could feel myself unraveling. That's when I felt Daniel step closer, his hand settling on my shoulder. To anyone watching, it probably looked like a supportive gesture. But his grip wasn't warm or comforting. It was stiff, mechanical. He leaned in again, his voice low, sharp enough to slice through my already bleeding heart. I told you, Claire. I want a divorce. It's over. The ground beneath me felt like it was caving in, crumbling just as the soil swallowed my parents' caskets. I turned to him, hoping, begging that maybe I had misunderstood. But his face was calm, calculated. He had chosen this exact moment. He had waited until I was broken, until the dirt was falling onto the people I loved most, to deliver the killing blow. What? My voice cracked. You heard me, he repeated emotionless. We'll discuss it at home. Don't make a scene. The kids don't need that. And then he pulled his hand away, just as coldly as he'd placed it there. I looked around in desperation, wondering if anyone else had heard him. But my family's eyes were fixed on the burial, their tears flowing for my parents. No one noticed that my husband had just stabbed me in the heart in front of them all. Amanda slipped her icy hand into mine again. Mom, you look like you're going to faint. I forced myself to breathe in, breathe out, the way my mom had taught me when I was a little girl having panic attacks. I'm okay, honey, I whispered. Saying goodbye is just really hard. But the truth was, I wasn't saying goodbye to just my parents. I was saying goodbye to the woman I used to be. The woman who believed in loyalty, who believed in second chances, who believed in Daniel. That woman was being buried right there alongside my parents. The ride home was silent except for Emily's soft sniffles in the back seat. She clutched the single white rose she'd wanted to place on Grandma's casket, refusing to let it go. Amanda sat staring out the window, her face pale, lost in her thoughts. Matthew stared straight ahead, his fists clenched on his lap. Daniel drove with perfect posture, both hands on the wheel, his eyes fixed on the road. To anyone else, he might have looked like a steady driver leading his grieving family home. But I knew better. His silence wasn't grief. It was indifference. When we pulled into the driveway, the house stood there like a stranger. The white siding and blue shutters, the garden where my kids had played, the porch where Daniel and I once dreamed about the future, it all looked different now. Cold. Empty. Kids, go upstairs and change, I said softly as we stepped inside. There's leftover casserole if you're hungry. They obeyed quietly, their footsteps fading upstairs, leaving me alone with Daniel for the first time since his brutal whisper at the cemetery. He loosened his tie and headed straight toward his home office. Of course, even today work came first. Daniel, my voice cracked, but I forced strength into it. We need to talk. He turned, his expression momentarily flickering. Was it guilt? Regret? No. It vanished in an instant. Not now, Claire. I have briefs to review. Briefs. My voice rose despite myself. I just buried my parents. You told me you want a divorce. And you want to go review briefs. He looked toward the stairs, making sure the children weren't listening. Keep your voice down. We'll talk when you're less emotional. The kids don't need to see this. Less emotional? The words dripped with venom. When exactly would it be convenient for you to destroy our family? Tomorrow? Next week? Something ugly flashed in his eyes. Stop being dramatic, Claire. This marriage hasn't worked for a long time. You know it. I know it. We've just been going through the motions. Going through the motions? My laugh came out broken, bitter. I've been your wife for 18 years. I've raised your children. I've stood by you. And you think it's just going through the motions? He stepped closer, his voice cold, calculated. Don't act like you've been some saint. You chose this life. You gave up your career. No one forced you. My heart clenched. I gave it up because you said our children needed their mother. They did, he replied sharply. And what they got was someone who made the whole house miserable with her quiet suffering. I staggered back, his words like knives tearing through me. Quiet suffering. That's how he saw me? From upstairs, I heard a floorboard creak. One of the children was listening. How much had they already heard? How much poison had he already poured into our lives? I swallowed my rage. We'll talk later. No, Claire, he said flatly, straightening his tie once again. There's nothing left to talk about. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow, I'll call my lawyer. You should do the same. He paused, his voice turning icy. For the children's sake, try not to make this harder than it has to be. And with that he walked away, leaving me in the hallway of a house that suddenly felt like a tomb. That night, the house felt heavier than ever. It wasn't just grief pressing down on me anymore. It was betrayal. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, while Daniel's presence lingered from down the hall in the guest room. He hadn't even tried to hide his decision. He had made it clear, our marriage was over. But what cut me deeper than his words was the timing. He had chosen the moment I was at my weakest. The day I had buried both of my parents. He had calculated everything, thinking I would be too broken to fight. The silence in the house was broken by a small voice. Mommy. I sat up quickly, my heart racing. Emily stood in the doorway, her little stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm, tears streaming down her cheeks. I had a bad dream, she sobbed, climbing into my arms. You and Daddy were fighting, and then Daddy went away. Just like Grandma and Grandpa. But he didn't get sick first. He just disappeared. Her words froze me. My baby had heard more than I wanted her to. I kissed her forehead, my voice trembling as I whispered, Sweetheart, Daddy isn't going anywhere. He's just sleeping in the guest room tonight. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and searching. But why? Did you have a fight? I held her tighter, hiding my own tears. Sometimes grown-ups need space to think about things. But that doesn't mean we don't love you. But you still love each other, right? She asked softly. Like Grandma and Grandpa loved each other. The lie caught in my throat. I couldn't say yes, but I couldn't crush her innocence either. So I whispered, We both love you very much. That will never change. She sniffled, resting her head on my chest. I want Grandma, she whispered, her little body trembling. I know, baby, I whispered back. I want her too. I held her until she drifted off to sleep, and then I carefully laid her back in her bed. My heart felt like it was being ripped apart piece by piece. She deserved stability, love, and peace, but her father had already destroyed all of that. As I walked back to my room, I heard another sound. It was Amanda's voice, muffled but clear enough through her slightly open door. I froze, listening. No, I don't know what's happening, she whispered into her phone. But something's really wrong. Dad slept in the guest room, and Mom looks like she's going to break every time she sees him. There was a pause, and then I heard her say, I think they're getting divorced. What happens to us if they do? What about Emily? She's already so sad about Grandma and Grandpa. I don't think she can handle it. I pressed my hand against my mouth to stop the sob building in my throat. My daughter, just 16, was carrying fears no child should carry. Instead of thinking about prom dresses or college, she was lying in bed, terrified that her world was about to collapse. I wanted to rush into her room, to hold her and promise everything would be okay. But I couldn't promise that anymore. Not with Daniel. Downstairs, I found Matthew sitting at the kitchen table, a bowl of cereal in front of him, untouched. He stared at it like it didn't even exist. You're up early, I said softly, trying to sound normal as I poured myself a cup of coffee. He shrugged without looking at me. Couldn't sleep. I sat down across from him. Bad dreams. Something like that. He pushed his cereal around with his spoon, then finally looked up at me. His eyes were steady, but I could see the fear behind them. Mom, are you and Dad okay? The directness of his question took my breath away. Matthew had always been sharp, always the one who noticed things others tried to hide. Why do you ask? I tried to stall. Because he slept in the guest room, he said bluntly. Because you both look miserable. Because Amanda cried all night, and Emily is having nightmares. His voice cracked, but he pressed on. Are you getting divorced? The word hung in the air like a bomb, waiting to explode. I reached across the table and took his hand. Matthew. My hands shook. Just tell me the truth, Mom, he said firmly. I'm not a little kid anymore. Looking at him, his stubborn expression so much like my father's, I knew he was right. He wasn't a child anymore. None of them were. They'd been living in a house full of coldness, feeling the tension between Daniel and me, absorbing it all like poison. We're having some problems, I admitted softly. Your father and I need to figure some things out. His eyes darkened. Problems like you don't love each other anymore? His bluntness stabbed me. I swallowed hard. It's complicated. No, it's not, he said, pushing his bowl away and standing up. His voice was steady, filled with a quiet anger I'd never heard from him before. Either you love each other or you don't. Either you want to stay married or you don't. It's not complicated. It's just hard. I stared at him, stunned. Out of the mouths of children came the truths adults avoided. What do you want me to say, Matthew? I whispered. His lips trembled before he spoke. I want you to say you'll fight for us. I want you to say our family is worth saving. His voice cracked on the last word. Before I could answer, Daniel walked into the kitchen. He was already dressed in one of his expensive suits, polished, perfect, like nothing had happened. He poured himself coffee and checked his phone. Matthew's jaw tightened. Really, Dad? You're just going to work like everything's normal. Daniel didn't even look up. Everything is normal. I have meetings. Matthew's voice rose. Mom just buried her parents yesterday. And you told her you want a divorce at the funeral. Nothing about this is normal. My blood ran cold. He had heard. My son had heard those cruel words at the cemetery. Daniel's jaw stiffened. That's between your mother and me. No, it's not, Matthew shot back, his voice shaking with anger. It's between all of us. We're your family too. Remember. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Don't take that tone with me. Matthew straightened, his shoulders squared, his voice steady and strong. What tone should I take, Dad? Should I thank you for waiting until Grandma and Grandpa were in the ground before you destroyed our family? Matthew, that's enough, I whispered, but even as I said it, I felt a flicker of pride. My son had the courage I had buried for years. Daniel placed his coffee cup down with controlled force. This conversation is over. Your mother and I will talk to you when the time is right. When will that be? Matthew's voice cracked. After you've already moved out? After you've divided us up like we're furniture? The kitchen fell into silence. The only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. The same clock Daniel and I had bought on our second anniversary. Daniel straightened his tie, his mask sliding back into place. I'll be home late tonight. Don't wait up. He left, his shoes clicking against the floor, the front door slamming behind him. Matthew stood frozen for a moment before turning to me. His eyes filled with tears. I hate him, he whispered. I hate him for doing this to you. For doing this to us. I pulled him into my arms, holding his tall, trembling frame. Don't say that, honey. He's still your father. Matthew shook his head, his voice raw. No. A father protects his family. A father doesn't abandon them when things get hard. His words sliced through me with painful truth. 3 days after the funeral, the house still smelled like casseroles and sympathy cards. People had dropped off food, flowers, and promises of prayers. But by now, the visits had stopped, the phone calls grew less frequent, and everyone had gone back to their lives. Everyone except me. I sat alone in my parents' house, surrounded by their belongings. Every corner whispered their presence. The blanket Mom used to knit in her chair, Dad's reading glasses still sitting by the window, his toolbox resting by the back door. They had built this home together, filled it with love, laughter, and decades of memories. Now it was silent. As I opened a drawer in the kitchen, I found my mother's old recipe box. My hands trembled when I noticed a manila envelope tucked inside, with my name written on it in her careful handwriting. For Claire, when you need to remember who you are. My heart pounded as I slid it open. Inside was a letter, dated just 2 weeks before she passed away, and a small key. My eyes filled with tears as I unfolded the letter and began to read. My dearest daughter, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. And if I'm gone, I fear what I suspected might already be true. Knowing you, you're probably still making excuses for him, still trying to convince yourself that love can fix what was never whole. But Claire, There are things you need to know. Things I should have told you long ago. This key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Box 847. Martin doesn't know about it. Inside, you'll find evidence. It will hurt you, but it will also free you. Your husband is not the man you think he is. He never was. You are stronger than you believe, my darling girl. You are your father's daughter and mine. Don't let him make you forget that. Don't let him make you think you're nothing without him. You were everything before him, and you will be everything long after. He is only a shadow. A memory. I love you. Fight for yourself. Fight for your children. But most of all, fight because you deserve better than scraps. Mom. Tears blurred my vision. My hands shook as I read the letter again, then again. My mother had known. She had seen something I refused to see. And she had left me a key, literally and figuratively. The next morning, I drove to the bank, the small key clenched so tightly in my fist it left an imprint. Sitting in the car, I debated for 10 long minutes. Part of me wanted to throw the key away, to pretend I had never found the letter. Because whatever waited in that box could tear apart what little strength I had left. But then I heard Mom's voice in my head, the way she had sounded during one of our last real conversations before the morphine dulled her. Claire, you're worth more than settling for less. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. So I walked inside. The bank clerk guided me to a private room and placed the box on the table. My hands shook as I slid the key in and opened it. Inside was a thick folder. I pulled it out, my stomach twisting as I flipped it open. The first thing I saw were photographs. My breath caught. Daniel, my husband, kissing a woman I didn't recognize. They were standing outside Romano's, the same restaurant where he once told me I was different, where he made me believe I was special. The timestamp was clear. 18 months ago. I turned the page. More photographs. Daniel with the same woman. Blonde, sharp, beautiful in a way that screamed confidence. They were entering a hotel together, leaving the next morning, her hand brushing his chest as he laughed at something she said. My chest tightened as I flipped through image after image. Each one was another stab in my heart. While I had been sitting in hospital rooms with my dying mother, Daniel had been sneaking into hotels with his mistress. And there was more. Bank statements showing transfers from our joint accounts into a secret one under his name. Money from the children's college funds gone. Credit card bills from restaurants, jewelry stores, weekend getaways, all for her. Jewelry I had never seen. Trips we had never taken. Vacations he said we couldn't afford as a family, but somehow, he could afford with her. At the bottom of the folder was a business card. Dakota Jensen, private investigator. Paperclipped to it was a note in my mother's handwriting. Hired him 8 months ago when I saw Martin's car at the Marriott. Dakota is discreet. He has more evidence if you need it. I dropped the folder on the table and buried my face in my hands. My entire marriage, my whole adult life was built on lies. After several minutes, I picked up the card. With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. Mrs. Thompson, a calm male voice answered. I'm sorry for your loss. Your mother was an extraordinary woman. She hired you. My voice cracked. Yes, he said gently. She was worried about certain irregularities with your husband. I have additional documentation if you'd like to meet. How long? I asked, my throat dry. How long has he been cheating? There was a pause. Then he said, the current affair has been ongoing for approximately 2 years. But, Mrs. Thompson, there were others before this one. Your husband has been unfaithful for most of your marriage. My chest caved in. Most of our marriage? At least 4 affairs documented. Possibly more. I gripped the phone tighter. Images flashed in my mind. Me, pregnant with Matthew, decorating the nursery alone. Me, rocking Emily to sleep while he came home late. Me, planning Amanda's birthdays while he worked weekends. And all that time, he was with someone else. Who is she? The one in the photos. Her name was Melissa Kane, an associate at a rival law firm. They met at a legal conference. I pressed the phone to my ear until it hurt. My husband hadn't just betrayed me. He had built an entire secret life while I was raising his children, managing his home, caring for my dying parents. What do you want to do with this information? Dakota asked carefully. I looked down at the photographs scattered across the table. Daniel's smiling face, lit up in a way it hadn't been with me for years. I want to stop being a victim, I whispered. I want to fight back. That night, I sat at the kitchen table alone. The kids were upstairs, doing homework or pretending to. Daniel had gone to work late. But now I knew the truth. He wasn't in a conference room or reviewing a case. He was with her. Melissa. The woman who had stolen not just my husband, but the man I had wasted 18 years of my life on. I spread the papers and photos across the table. Each receipt, each bill, each bank transfer screamed betrayal. Every photograph of Daniel with her felt like a knife being twisted deeper into my chest. I had been making excuses for him for so long. I told myself he was tired, stressed, too busy. I thought if I tried harder, if I cooked better meals, if I stayed patient with his moods, if I made myself invisible, maybe he would come back to me. But the truth was right in front of me. He hadn't drifted away. He had walked away deliberately, step by step, into someone else's arms. My phone buzzed. Daniel's name lit up the screen. I stared at it for a moment, my hand trembling, then answered. Claire. His voice came smooth and practiced, the way he always sounded when he lied. Don't wait up. The Russell case is heating up, and I'll be working late. Might not be home until after midnight. I closed my eyes. The Russell case had already been settled weeks ago. Dakota's file confirmed it. He was lying to my face, the same way he had been for years. All right, I said softly, forcing my voice calm. Don't work too hard. He paused for a moment, maybe surprised at my tone, but then hung up without another word. I stared at the phone in my hand. How many times had I believed his excuses? How many times had I looked at him and convinced myself he was telling the truth? I was done being the fool. I picked up my phone again and dialed Dakota. I need you to follow him tonight, I said firmly. Daniel and Melissa. I want photos, receipts, everything. Mrs. Thompson, Dakota said gently, you already have enough evidence for a divorce. Why put yourself through more pain? This isn't just about divorce anymore, I whispered, my voice trembling but strong. He's been stealing from my children. He's been lying to their faces. I want him to pay for everything. Not just to me, but to Amanda, to Matthew, to Emily. There was a pause. Then I'll get you everything you need, Dakota said finally. When I hung up, I pressed my palms against the table, my whole body shaking. I wasn't the woman who baked cookies for PTA meetings anymore. I wasn't the wife who waited up late for her husband. I wasn't the fool who believed in his lies. I was a mother. And I was ready to fight. The next morning, Daniel left for work as if nothing had happened. He kissed Emily's forehead quickly, mumbled a goodbye to Matthew, and walked out the door with his briefcase. He didn't even glance at Amanda, who stood by the stairs with her arms crossed, glaring at him. I watched him go, my jaw tight. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, I moved into his home office. 4 years, that room had been his sanctuary, off limits to me and the children. His excuse was always the same. Confidential cases, important work. I had respected that boundary like a trained soldier. Quietly bringing him coffee, shutting the door when the kids got too loud. But now I knew, it wasn't respect. It was control. He had built walls around himself, shutting me out, keeping secrets. I sat at his heavy mahogany desk, the one he insisted on buying when he made partner. The computer glowed, demanding a password. My hands shook as I tried the obvious. Amanda's birthday. Nothing. Matthew's. Nothing. Emily's. Nothing. Our anniversary. Nothing. And then I thought of Melissa. My stomach twisted. I typed her name, followed by the year they met. The screen unlocked. My breath caught in my throat. Emails flooded the screen. Some from Melissa, deleted, but not gone, discussing weekend trips, hotels, plans they made while I was sitting by my mother's hospital bed. Business emails, too, confirming Dakota's suspicions. Daniel had been double-billing clients, charging hours he hadn't worked while he was with her. Expense reports with fake trips, dinners, hotels. My hands trembled as I clicked through. Each email was another piece of proof. Each line was another betrayal. One email froze me in place. It wasn't about me. It was from Melissa. Her handwriting, scanned and attached. A letter. My darling Daniel. I can't wait forever. I want children, a family, a real life. You promised me this year would be different. If you're just stringing me along, like Jennifer said you did with her, I need to know now. I love you, but I won't be a secret forever. Yours. Melissa. Jennifer. There had been another before Melissa. Maybe more. My chest burned. My parents had welcomed him into our family. My children had looked up to him as their father. And all along, he had been planning his escape. I gathered the printed emails and files, sliding them into a folder. My hands were shaking, but there was something new inside me. Something hard, sharp, and unbreakable. When I heard the front door slam later that evening, my heart didn't race the way it used to. Daniel came home at exactly 7, loosening his tie, his face polished with his usual charm. He looked at me in the kitchen. Smells good. What are we having? I looked at him, my lips curling into a calm smile. Lasagna. The children are upstairs. He nodded, already checking his phone, not realizing the storm gathering across the table from him. For the first time in 18 years, I wasn't afraid of him anymore. Dinner that night felt like a stage play. Daniel sat at the head of the table, cutting his lasagna into neat squares, pretending everything was normal. Emily chattered about her day at school, her voice soft, careful, like she was trying to keep the peace. Amanda barely touched her food, glaring at her plate, while Matthew ate in silence, his jaw tight. I sat there watching, listening. Every clink of Daniel's fork against the plate sounded like a hammer striking glass. So, Daniel said finally, his tone smooth, rehearsed. How's everyone doing? Getting back into routine. Amanda slammed her fork down. Routine? You mean pretending like you didn't ruin Mom's life at Grandma and Grandpa's funeral? Daniel froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Watch your tone, Amanda. No, she snapped, her voice breaking. I'm not going to watch my tone. You humiliated her. You humiliated all of us. Do you even care what we're going through? Matthew looked up from his plate, his eyes dark with anger. She's right, Dad. You don't care. You haven't cared for years. Enough, Daniel said sharply, his voice rising. I will not be disrespected in my own home. Then act like it's your home. Amanda shouted, tears spilling down her cheeks. Not some hotel you come and go from whenever you want. The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel's face flushed red, his hand gripping his fork so tightly his knuckles turned white. He looked at me, his eyes filled with cold fury. This is your doing, he said quietly, his voice low and dangerous. You've poisoned them against me. I shook my head slowly. No. Daniel. You did that yourself. Emily's little voice broke through the tension. Daddy, please don't fight with Mommy. Daniel's expression softened for a moment, but only for her. He reached across the table, touching Emily's hand. I'm not fighting, sweetheart. Daddy just wants peace in the house. Amanda pushed her chair back with a screech. Peace? You don't get to say that word. Not after what you've done. She stormed upstairs, her footsteps pounding against the floor. Matthew followed quietly, his face pale but his eyes steady. He didn't even look at Daniel as he left. Daniel sat back, breathing heavily, his jaw tight. He pointed his fork at me. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To turn them against me. I met his eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't look away. No. Daniel. You did that all by yourself. Children see more than we think. They've seen you neglect this family. They've felt the distance. They've felt your lies. His eyes narrowed. You think you're clever, don't you? You think you're strong. But you're nothing without me, Claire. Nothing. You've never worked a real job in nearly 2 decades. You wouldn't survive a week without me. I smiled softly, though my hands trembled under the table. We'll see. He sneered, standing up and throwing his napkin on the plate. Don't test me. You'll regret it. When he stormed into his office and slammed the door, Emily looked at me with wide, scared eyes. Mommy, why is Daddy so mean? I pulled her close, kissing her hair, my heart breaking. Sometimes people forget how to love the right way, I whispered. But that's not your fault. Never your fault. Later that night, after I tucked Emily into bed and checked on Amanda and Matthew, I went back downstairs. Daniel's office door was shut, but I could hear him on the phone. Don't worry, she's too weak to fight me. She's nothing without me. Once I file for divorce, I'll make sure I get the house. The kids will see the truth. She'll be left with nothing. You and I can finally be together without all this mess. My blood ran cold. Melissa. He was talking to Melissa. I leaned closer to the door, holding my breath. She won't survive on her own, Daniel said, his tone full of arrogance. She's always depended on me. She has no career, no money of her own. Once I'm done, she'll have no choice but to give up. That's why I picked this timing. Her parents are gone. She's broken. She won't fight back. I pressed my hand against my mouth to stop from gasping. He didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to destroy me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mother's letter echoing in my head. Don't let him make you forget who you are. Fight for yourself. Fight for your children. I knew then. Daniel had underestimated me. He thought grief had made me weak, but it had made me sharper, clearer. The next morning, I met Dakota in a small cafe downtown. He handed me a thick envelope. Everything you asked for. Photos, bank statements, witness accounts. Enough to not only win a divorce case but to ruin his career. I took the envelope, my fingers trembling. Will this bankrupt him? Dakota leaned back, his expression calm. It could. With the evidence of double billing, the misuse of client funds, and the affair with a rival firm's associate, it won't just cost him money. It'll cost him his license to practice law. I stared at the envelope, my heart pounding. This was it. The weapon my mother had left for me. The weapon Daniel had handed me with his arrogance. Are you ready for this? Dakota asked. I thought of Amanda's tears, Matthew's anger, Emily's nightmares. I thought of my parents, lying side by side in the ground. I thought of Daniel's voice on the phone, plotting my destruction. Yes, I said firmly, sliding the envelope into my bag. I'm ready. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, but it didn't bring warmth. It felt sharp, almost intrusive, like it was pulling me out of the safe darkness where I had been hiding. I sat at the edge of the bed, the envelope from Dakota resting in my lap. My fingers traced over the edges again and again, as if the paper itself could give me strength. Downstairs, I could hear Daniel's voice. He was on the phone, laughing, polished, the way he sounded when he was charming clients, or her. That sound used to make me proud. Used to remind me of the ambitious young lawyer I fell in love with. Now it felt like poison slipping under the door. When I finally went downstairs, he was standing in the kitchen, sipping his coffee, scrolling through his phone. He looked up at me with that same mask of indifference he had perfected. "Morning," he said flatly. "Morning," I answered, keeping my voice calm. He studied me for a moment, like he was trying to measure how broken I was. "You look tired." I forced a small smile. "I didn't sleep much." "Well, you should," he said, turning back to his phone. "The kids need stability. And they'll need it even more once we start transitioning." Transitioning. My voice caught. "Our separation," he said casually, like he was talking about the weather. "I'll file next week. My attorney will draft the paperwork. Don't worry, I'll make sure you and the kids have enough." He said the word like it was charity, like he was doing me a favor. I gripped the counter behind me, keeping my voice steady. "Enough." "Yes," he said smoothly. "I'll keep the house. You'll get the car and some support. The kids will split their time between us, but eventually, they'll realize where the better stability is. With me." He smirked faintly, as though he had already won. I stared at him, my chest tight. He really believed I was powerless. He really believed I was the same woman who used to wait up for him, praying he'd come home in time for dinner. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Later that day, after the kids went to school, I drove to the courthouse. I met with an attorney my mother's friend had recommended, a woman named Sarah Carter. She was sharp, calm, and her eyes carried the kind of fire I desperately needed. I laid the envelope on her desk. "This is everything. Proof of affairs, stolen funds, fraud. Enough to destroy him. She flipped through the documents with growing intensity. Claire, this isn't just a divorce case. This is criminal. I don't care what it is, I said, my voice breaking. I just want him to pay. I want him to feel even a fraction of what he's put me and my children through. Sarah leaned forward. With this evidence, you could take almost everything. Custody, assets, even his career. Are you ready for that? I thought of Emily's tears, Amanda's anger, Matthew's quiet pain. I thought of my mother's letter. And I nodded. I'm ready. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork, meetings, and quiet strategy. I kept everything hidden, playing the dutiful wife while Daniel strutted around the house, convinced he was untouchable. He bragged about cases, about dinners with colleagues, about promotions on the horizon. He didn't know his empire was already collapsing beneath him. At night, when the kids were asleep, I sat with Sarah in her office, planning every step. She explained how the fraud charges would unravel his finances, how the affair with a rival associate could be leveraged in court, how the bank transfers from our children's college funds would be unforgivable in the eyes of a judge. Each detail was a stone in the wall I was building. A wall that would soon trap Daniel in the very prison he had built for me. But it wasn't just strategy. There were nights when I broke down, when the weight of betrayal crushed me. Sarah would place a hand on mine and remind me, "You're not just doing this for revenge. You're doing this for survival." One evening, Amanda found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. She stood there silently for a moment before speaking. "Mom," she whispered, her eyes red. "Are you really going to leave him?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, I am." She nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Good. Because if you didn't, I was going to." I blinked at her, stunned. "What do you mean?" "I was going to leave this house the second I turned 18, she said, her voice breaking. "Because I can't stand watching him hurt you anymore. I can't stand pretending he's a father when he's not. I was going to take Emily with me. But if you're leaving, then maybe we still have a family. Just not with him." I pulled her into my arms, both of us shaking. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I should have protected you from this sooner." "No," she said firmly, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "You're protecting us now. That's what matters." When I tucked her into bed that night, I felt a new strength inside me. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for them. The turning point came one rainy Friday. Daniel came home late, his suit wrinkled, his tie loose. He looked smug, triumphant, like a man who believed he had the world in his hands. He poured himself a drink and leaned against the counter. "I met with my attorney today," he said casually. "We'll file next week. I'll make sure you get a fair settlement, Claire. Don't worry, you won't be homeless." I looked at him, my lips curling into the faintest smile. "Funny," I said softly. "Because I met with mine too." His smirk faltered. "What?" I walked toward him slowly, my eyes never leaving his. "And unlike yours, mine knows about the affairs. The stolen money. The fraud. The lies. Every single thing." For the first time in years I saw it. Fear. He set his glass down slowly, his jaw tightening. "What did you say?" "I said," I whispered, my voice steady, "I'm not your victim anymore." Daniel's face shifted from arrogance to shock so quickly, I almost laughed. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, like words had betrayed him for once. For a man who lived on charm and persuasion, silence looked strange on him. "What do you mean?" he finally managed, his voice low, sharp. I stepped closer, my heart pounding, but my voice calm. "I know about Melissa. I know about the other women. I know about the money you stole, the clients you lied to, the accounts you drained. I know everything, Daniel." His eyes widened, and then like a reflex, his mask returned. He chuckled, shaking his head. "You don't know what you're talking about. You've been through a lot. Your parents, the grief. It's messing with your head. You're imagining things." I almost admired his performance. Almost. "Imagine this," I said, dropping the folder on the counter with a loud thud. The paper spilled out. Photographs, receipts, bank statements, emails. His secrets, laid bare under the kitchen light. His smirk vanished. Daniel's hand reached for the papers, but I placed my palm flat on them, My eyes locked on his. Don't. I've made copies. This is just one set. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the steady tick of the kitchen clock. Then he exhaled slowly, his confidence cracking. You've been digging. I didn't have to dig, I said. My mother did it for me before she died. Even she saw the truth about you. His jaw tightened. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a growl. Do you have any idea what you've done? You're playing with fire, Claire. If this gets out, it won't just hurt me. It'll destroy you too. You depend on me. You always have. Without me, you're nothing. For the first time in years, I laughed. A sharp, broken laugh that startled even me. That's where you're wrong. Without you, Daniel, I'm finally free. His nostrils flared, his face turning red. You think you can take me down? I built this life. I built this house, this family. You think a pathetic folder of lies will change that? Not lies, I said softly. Proof. He grabbed his glass and downed the rest of his drink, slamming it on the counter. You won't win, Claire. I'll bury you in court. I'll take the kids. I'll make sure you walk away with nothing. You're not strong enough for this fight. But even as he said it, his voice trembled. He was trying to convince himself, not me. That night, I locked the folder away, but I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Daniel pacing in his office. He was rattled. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The next morning, Amanda knocked softly on my bedroom door. Mom, she whispered, stepping inside. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. I heard you last night. You told him you know. I sat up, reaching for her hand. Yes, sweetheart. I know everything. Tears filled her eyes. Does that mean we're leaving him? I pulled her into my arms, stroking her hair. It means we're going to be okay. I promise you that. Matthew overheard us from the hallway. He stepped in, his voice shaking but strong. Good. Because I'm done pretending he's my dad. He's just a stranger in a suit. Amanda looked at him, then at me. What about Emily? She still thinks he loves us. My chest tightened. Emily was too young to see the cracks, too innocent to understand the depth of his betrayal. But soon, even she would see it. That evening, Daniel came home late again, his tie loose, his expression grim. The kids were in the living room, pretending to watch TV, but their eyes flicked toward him with quiet anger. He walked into the kitchen where I was cooking. We need to talk, he said, his tone clipped. I set down the spoon and faced him. Then talk. He glanced toward the living room, lowering his voice. Not here. Upstairs. We went into our bedroom, and he shut the door. His face twisted with barely controlled rage. I don't know where you got those files, but you're making a mistake. If you go through with this, I'll ruin you. No, I said firmly. You already tried to ruin me. At my parents' funeral. That was your chance to destroy me. But I'm still here. Stronger than you think. His hands clenched into fists. You think you're strong because of some paperwork? Because of some lawyer? You don't know how this game works, Claire. I've been winning battles like this for years. I know judges, I know the system. You won't win. Maybe not, I admitted. But you've underestimated me, Daniel. And you've underestimated your children. They see you for who you are now. Even if you strip me of everything, you'll never strip them from me. His face hardened. We'll see. For the next week, the house was a war zone of silence. He avoided me, I avoided him, and the kids avoided us both. The air was thick with tension, every dinner an explosion waiting to happen. But behind the scenes, I worked with Sarah. She filed motions, gathered witness statements, secured bank records. Every day, my case grew stronger. And every day, Daniel's mask slipped further. One night, as he left the house, Amanda whispered, "Where do you think he's going?" I looked at her, my heart heavy. "Where he always goes." "Then why don't you stop him?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "Because soon he'll stop himself." And I was right. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Daniel came home furious, his face pale, his suit wrinkled. He slammed his briefcase down on the table, his voice shaking with rage. "What did you do?" he shouted. The kids froze on the couch, their eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" I asked calmly. "You know damn well what I'm talking about. The firm is investigating me. Clients are calling. Someone leaked information about my billing, my accounts. This is your doing, isn't it?" I tilted my head, keeping my voice even. "I didn't leak anything. The truth just has a way of coming out." He stared at me, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. "You'll regret this, Claire. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming." For the first time I smiled. A real smile. "Neither do you." The storm finally broke on a Thursday afternoon. Daniel came home earlier than usual, his face gray, his hands trembling as he tossed his briefcase onto the couch. For the first time in years, he didn't look like the confident attorney who could charm anyone in a room. He looked small. Shaken. I was at the dining table, helping Emily with her math homework. Amanda and Matthew were upstairs, but the moment the front door slammed, I knew they were listening from above. Daniel loosened his tie, pacing the floor. "You've destroyed me, Claire," he spat. "The firm suspended me today. They're investigating every account I've touched in the last 5 years. Do you know what that means?" I didn't look up from Emily's worksheet. "It means the truth is finally catching up to you." His laugh was bitter, hollow. "The truth? The truth is whatever people can prove in court. And you think you're clever, don't you? Feeding them lies. Poisoning my reputation. All because you couldn't handle the fact that I was done with you." I set down the pencil and looked at him steadily. "You were done with me the moment you cheated, Daniel. The moment you chose her, and every woman before her. The moment you stole from our children's future. Don't you dare blame me for your downfall. You did this to yourself." His face twisted with rage. He slammed his hand against the wall, making Emily jump. She clutched my arm, her little voice trembling. "Mommy, I'm scared." I pulled her close, glaring at him. "Do you see? Do you see what you've become? You scare your own daughter. The same little girl who used to run to the door when you came home." For a moment I saw it, the flicker of guilt in his eyes. But just as quickly it was gone. He turned away, muttering under his breath. Amanda's voice rang from the stairs. "Stop yelling at her." She came down quickly, her fists clenched. Matthew followed, standing silently but firmly behind her. Daniel turned to them, his jaw tight. "Go upstairs. This is between your mother and me." "No," Amanda snapped. "It's between all of us. You've hurt all of us." Matthew finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "You're not a father. You're just a man who lied his way into this house." Daniel's face went pale, as though their words cut deeper than mine ever could. For the first time, he looked around the room and realized he was outnumbered, not by lawyers, not by paperwork, but by his own family. He sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. His voice cracked, barely a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Amanda scoffed. "Yes, you did. You just never thought you'd get caught." Silence fell over the room, heavy and suffocating. Emily pressed against me, Matthew crossed his arms, Amanda stood tall with tears streaming down her face. And Daniel, he looked broken, but not enough for me to believe he was sorry. That night, after the kids went to bed, he cornered me in the kitchen. His voice was lower, almost pleading. "Claire, listen to me. We can fix this. If you pull back the investigation, if you tell them it was a mistake, I can save my career. I'll end things with Melissa. I'll try to be better. Just don't ruin me." I stared at him, stunned. "You're only saying that because you're scared. Not because you love me. Not because you love the kids. You don't even know how to love anymore." His eyes flashed. "And what about you? You think you're innocent? You've been plotting behind my back, waiting to destroy me. Do you know what that makes you?" "Yes," I said calmly, stepping closer. "It makes me your wife. The one who finally stopped being blind." He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "You asked for divorce at my parents' funeral, Daniel. The lowest, cruelest moment of my life, and you thought you could crush me while I was weak. But you were wrong. You didn't bury me that day. You woke me up." His lips parted, but no words came out. For once, Daniel Thompson, the man who always had the last word, was silent. The next morning, Sarah called. Her voice was brisk, professional, but I could hear the satisfaction beneath it. "Claire, the judge has approved an emergency hearing. With the evidence we've submitted, it won't just be a divorce settlement. It will be a full financial audit. If this goes the way I expect, he'll lose almost everything." I sat in the car after the call, staring at the steering wheel. My hands trembled, my heart pounded. This was it. The moment everything would change. When I drove home, Daniel was waiting on the porch. He looked different, his suit wrinkled, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. As I stepped out of the car, he walked toward me quickly, desperation in every step. "Claire, please," he said, his voice breaking. "Don't do this. Don't take everything from me. I'll change. I'll beg if I have to." His knees nearly buckled. "Just don't let them destroy me." I looked at him, this man who once held all the power, now trembling on the edge of ruin. And for the first time in years, I felt nothing. No fear, no love, no hate. Just clarity. "You destroyed yourself, Daniel," I said softly. "All I did was stop cleaning up the mess." He dropped to his knees on the porch, his voice hoarse. "Claire, please. Don't leave me with nothing." The kids watched from the window, their faces pressed against the glass. They saw their father not as a hero, not even as a villain, but as a broken man begging for scraps of mercy. And I knew then, this wasn't the end. The final blow was still to come. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and paper, the kind of smell that clings to history. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands clasped together, my lawyer Sarah by my side. Amanda and Matthew were behind me, their eyes steady, their presence giving me strength. Emily was too young for this, so a neighbor watched her at home. Daniel entered a few minutes later, his once pristine suit rumpled, his tie crooked. His eyes darted around the room, no longer the confident attorney striding into court, but a man on the verge of collapse. He sat across from me, and for a fleeting second, our eyes met. I saw fear. And he saw something he had never seen in me before. Power. The judge entered, and the room settled. Papers shuffled. Voices quieted. My heart pounded in my chest as Sarah began presenting the case. "Your Honor, we have evidence of financial misconduct, including double billing, fraudulent charges, and misappropriation of marital assets. We also have proof of infidelity, which directly affected the well-being of the family. My client is not only seeking divorce but also full custody of the children and a financial judgment that reflects the extent of Mr. Thompson's betrayal." Daniel's lawyer tried to object, tried to twist the narrative, painting me as an emotional woman seeking revenge. But Sarah was relentless. One by one, she laid out the evidence. Bank statements, emails, hotel receipts, witness testimony from Dakota, the private investigator, and finally, the letter from Melissa herself, demanding that Daniel choose her or risk losing her. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as each piece of evidence painted Daniel into a corner. He shifted uncomfortably, his face pale, his hands shaking. When it was his turn to speak, he stood, his voice trembling. "Your Honor, I admit to mistakes. But I am still the father of these children. I love them. I provide for them. Without me, this family will fall apart." Amanda couldn't stay silent. She stood abruptly, tears streaming down her face. "That's not true." Her voice broke through the courtroom like a crack of thunder. "You don't love us. You don't even see us. You only care about yourself. Mom is the one who stayed. Mom is the one who held us together when you didn't even bother to come home. We don't need you. Not anymore." The judge raised a hand, silencing the room, but the words hung in the air, undeniable. Daniel sat back down heavily, his face ashen. He looked at Amanda like she was a stranger, like he was realizing too late that his own children had slipped away from him. By the end of the hearing, the judge's decision was clear. I was granted full custody of the children. Daniel was ordered to pay significant restitution, not just to me but also to the clients he had defrauded. His license to practice law was suspended pending further investigation. In one morning, the man who once believed he was untouchable lost everything. As the gavel came down, Daniel turned to me, his eyes red, his voice breaking. "Claire, please. Don't do this. Don't take everything. I can't. I stood slowly, my hands steady. You already did this to yourself, Daniel. You chose lies over love. Betrayal over family. Greed over honor. I'm not the one taking everything. You gave it away. For the first time in our marriage, I walked out of that room with my head held high, and he stayed behind, broken. Outside the courthouse, the sky was bright, the air fresh. Amanda slipped her hand into mine. Matthew walked close on my other side. Emily came running from our neighbor's arms, throwing herself into me with a squeal. Mommy! Did we win? I knelt, hugging all three of them tightly. Yes, sweetheart. We won. That night, we sat together around the dinner table. Not in silence, not with fear hanging over us, but with laughter. Amanda teased Matthew about his haircut, Emily spilled juice all over the table, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight lift from my chest. Later, as I tucked Emily into bed, she asked softly, Mommy, are we safe now? I brushed her hair back, kissing her forehead. Yes, baby. We're safe now. And we always will be. When I finally lay down in bed, alone but not lonely, I thought of my parents. I imagined them watching from above, proud that their daughter had found her strength. Proud that I had protected their grandchildren. Proud that I had survived. And in that quiet moment, I realized something important. This wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about making Daniel pay, though he did. It was about freedom. About reclaiming my life. About showing my children that no matter how broken the world makes you, you can stand back up and fight. The moral was simple. Sometimes the person you think you need the most is the one holding you back. And when you finally let go, when you finally see your own worth, you don't just survive. You thrive. Daniel had asked for a divorce at my parents' funeral, believing he could bury me with grief. But in the end, it was him who was left buried, under the weight of his own lies, his greed, his arrogance. And I walked away, not just a survivor, but free.